I've always been fascinated by the idea of arranged marriages. But now that my daughters have reached marriageable age, I find that I'm even more interested. Wouldn't it be nice, I think, if I got to take part in the process? If instead of just sitting around waiting for one of my girls to bring home the first boy who made her heart beat faster, I could take an active role. I do, after all, love my girls. I have their best interest at heart. And if I do say so myself, I think I could be a little more objective about all of this. I could start collecting resumes tomorrow and look over them for the next few years, comparing the relative merits of prospective sons-in-law. I could check their academic records, their police records, their complete medical history. I could see what kinds of families they come from and if there's any indication of insanity or abuse. I could assess their various abilities, estimate their lifetime earning potentials. I could, in other words, see if any of these boys would be a good match for these girls I love so much, as only a daughter, only a father could. It seems reasonable enough to me. I don't know about you, but it seems reasonable to me. In the end, however, I know that one of those girls would come home with some boy, and I would look at him realizing that he met almost none of my criteria, and yet I would be able to tell by the look on her face that there is no match like the match made by the heart. I believe that is the same conclusion God reaches in today's Old Testament lesson from Jeremiah, chapter 31, verses 31 through 34, in which God looks on the face of His people Israel and says with a sigh, "The days are surely coming when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. It will not be like the covenant that I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, a covenant that they broke, though I was their husband, says the Lord. But this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says the Lord. I will put my law within them, and I will write it on their hearts. And I will be their God, and they shall be my people. No longer shall they teach one another or say to each other, 'Know the Lord,' for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, says the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity and remember their sin no more." They broke my covenant, God says, even though I was their husband. As I used to tell the 5th and 6th graders I taught in Sunday school, a covenant is a promise. And it's not just any kind of promise. It's a sacred promise, like the kind two people make when they are getting married. The covenant God made with His people when He brought them out of Egypt, however, was not only a marriage, it was an arranged marriage. With that same Father knows best attitude that I sometimes have, God said to His people, "Look, I brought you out of your captivity in Egypt. I brought you through the waters of the Red Sea. I brought you into safety here in the wilderness. Now I will be your God if you will promise to be my people." Old Testament scholar Lawrence Boat says that the covenant God made with His people there was a lot like the old vassal treaties of the Hittites, where an overlord, a major power, forced the smaller nations that he had conquered to cooperate with him lest he take them over completely. At Mount Sinai, God seemed to be saying to the Israelites, "Look, I delivered you from slavery. What you owe me is your allegiance." And the people were happy to agree. They said, "Whatever you command of us, we will do." And although God had their best interest at heart when He forged that covenant and gave them the 10 Commandments, it was an arranged marriage. And eventually Israel grew tired of the arrangement. Instead of remaining faithful to a husband they didn't really love, God's people began to stray away to other gods. Under the circumstances, their fickle pledge of allegiance wasn't strong enough to hold. God admits as much here in Jeremiah 31. He says the new covenant will be different from the old one. And if you look closely, you can see the difference. In the old covenant, God had said, if you will be my people, then I will be your God. It is a conditional covenant. And the condition is the people's faithfulness. But as you know, God's people were not faithful. They broke the covenant even though God was their husband. That's why they were carried off into exile. God turned His back on them. He knew when He wasn't wanted. They became easy prey for the Babylonians who conquered Jerusalem and destroyed the temple and dragged God's people away in chains. For the longest time, they languished in exile. But eventually, God began to dream a different dream for His people. And in due time, He said through the prophet Jeremiah, the days are surely coming when I will make a new covenant with my people. It won't be like the old one, the one that they broke. This time, I will put my law within them. I will write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. Do you hear the difference? He doesn't say, if they will be my people, I will be their God. He says, they will be my people. I will be their God. This is no longer an arranged marriage. It's a rearranged marriage. It is no longer a conditional covenant, but an unconditional one. I will be their God no matter what, He says. I will love them no matter what they do. He seems to understand that there is no match like the match made by the heart. And the covenants that are most successful are the ones that operate from the inside out rather than the outside in. Think about that woman who enters into an arranged marriage in some other culture. On her wedding day, her mother presents her with a long list of ways to keep her husband happy. Rule number 1, she says, always greet him at the door when he comes home and always with a smile. Rule number 2, always have his dinner hot and ready when he is ready to eat it. Rule number 3, wash up the supper dishes, keep the kitchen neat and tidy. The list would go on, and because the girl respected her mother, she would post it in a prominent place. Every day she would check each item off the list, and every night she would fall in bed exhausted